Good evening. My name is Jennifer Fraser, and tonight I'll be discussing Chapter 9 out of our books from Legal Environment of Business. Chapter 9 covered torts. Many of you may ask what a tort is. I myself did not know what a tort was before I started this class. Torts are actions that are not straight but crooked or civil wrongs. A tort may also be defined as interfering with someone's person or property. Difference in crimes and torts, they are one and the same, but they do have differences. A crime is a wrong that arises from a violation of public duty, whereas a tort is just the opposite. It is a wrong that arises in the violation of a private duty. Like I said, a crime and a tort can be one and the same. A tort happens to individuals, while crime pertains more toward the government. There are several different types of torts. Intentional torts, which occur when wrongdoers engage in intentional conduct that set out to actually harm someone. Tort of negligence, which is carelessness and unintentional, but still when you neglect safety and what you're supposed to do, then you wind up with the tort of negligence. The book gave the example of swinging your arms in a crowd and accidentally hitting someone. That would be a tort of negligence. Strict liability imposes liability without regard to whether there was any intent to harm or any negligence occurred. It is imposed to without regard to fault. Intentional torts can include assault, which is the intentional conduct that threatens a person with a well-founded fear of imminent harm, coupled with the present ability to carry out that threat of harm or of pain to that person. Battery is also an intentional tort. It is when you place hands on someone, when you intentionally, wrongfully touch someone that doesn't want to give you consent to touch them. False imprisonment also falls under intentional torts, and that's defined as intentional detention of a person without the consent of that person. The only rule of thumb to that is the shopkeeper's privilege, which permits the store owner to detain a suspected shoplifter as long as there is reasonable belief. They better have really good reasonable belief to detain that person and keep that person there. Intentional infliction of emotional distress is a tort involving conduct that goes beyond all bounds of decency and produces mental anguish in the harmed individual. Invasion of privacy consists of three different types of torts. Intrusion into plaintiff's private affairs, public disclosure of private facts, appropriation of plaintiff's name, likeness, or image for commercial advantage, and all of those fall under the invasion of privacy tort. Defamation, which is another intentional tort, is an untrue statement about a third party. Slander is the oral form of that, or spoken, and defamation, while libel, is written. The only defense against defamation is the truth. You can't, someone can't speak the truth about you, and you say that that's using defamation against you. The tort contract interference occurs when parties are not allowed freedom to contract without interference from third parties. Trespassing is an unintentional action with respect to someone's land or personal property. Negligence produces the widest range of tort liability. There are different elements: duty to exercise reasonable care, breach of duty, causation, and damages. And these are different types of negligence torts. Defenses to negligence include contributory negligence, which pretty much states even though the plaintiff was careless and the defendant should have been looking out for themselves and taking care of themselves. Comparative negligence. This defense permits a negligent plaintiff to recover some damages, but only to the degree of the proportion of the defendant's fault. Assumption of the risk has two categories: express assumption and implied primarily assumption. Immunity. Governments are mostly always immune from a tort liability. The final liability tort is strict liability. It's the absolute standard of liability imposed by law and circumstances. The court or legislators have determined required a high degree of protection. When this is imposed, the person or company who caused damage are required to compensate for those damages in an absolute sense. So that is my summary of Chapter 9 on torts, and I very much enjoyed learning about the legal environment of business. And Mr. Thompson, I want to thank you very much for giving me a little extra time to get this to you, because I really have had a lot going on with my grandmother. Thank you, and you're an awesome teacher.